right, good evening. Mike not on, I don't need it. We just wanted to make brief introductions. My name is Jeff Dace. I am the Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning for Decatur Public Schools. Hopefully you've seen me before for some good reasons, but we are proud to partner with the Regional Education Office tonight, Regional Education Office 39, and we're ready to bring this out and for awareness and basically some information so our students can stay safe and stay drug-free or as drug-free as possible, and that they can go on to have a bright future. With that, I also want to introduce my director, P12 Director of Teaching and Learning, Dr. Larry Gray. We're responsible for trying to do this uplift in Decatur Public Schools. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Joe Reddy for Regional Education Office 39. Thank you.
Thank you all for attending tonight. I want to point out a special guest. We have Officer Marty St. Pierre over here. Can you wave? From the Decatur Police Department, who has partnered with us, and he will be here to answer any questions or things just within our community. So I appreciate you coming and the support of Decatur Police Department. Thank you all for coming. I have been excited. I am Michael Deleon's #1 fan. He said, "Why do you keep coming to all my assemblies?" And I have followed him around and watched him speak to thousands of our students in this area. And I am so impacted just watching the reaction of students. For example, today, I saw them follow him right afterwards and they said, "You were the best speaker I've ever heard. And Michael, because of you, I want to quit." And I'm watching them physically hand their vapes over saying, "I didn't know it was that dangerous." So you are in for a treat. We all say, not my kid, not me, but I learn something every single time. So as a parent and an educator and community member, I want our kids safe. I want our community safe. And so education awareness is the first step. So thank you all for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. And I will stop talking and let Michael Deleon, please help me welcome Michael Deleon.
Check. Okay. So I have a big mouth anyway, but just to make sure everybody can hear me. My name is Michael Deleon. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm not home very much. I'm traveling all around the country. I've spoken in all 50 states, 27 different countries, and I'm trying to get kids to understand the importance of making powerful life choices. I worked with the Scared Straight program, Beyond Scared Straight TV show at A&E Television. I just wanted to share my favorite episode or an excerpt of my favorite episode with you because it's one of those episodes that really resonated with kids, and it showed me the importance of communication with the kids. I spent 12 years in prison from 1995 to 2007, so I don't talk to students in schools about drugs because I read about it. I don't talk to kids in schools about drugs because I went to school to learn about it. I talk to kids in schools about drugs because I was a drug addict and I destroyed my life. So I wrote a book while I was in prison. It's coming out next year. It's being turned into a full feature. So I'm so excited about it. I'm hoping Brad Pitt's available to play me, but well, I wanted somebody that resembled me. So I want you to understand a little bit more about why I do what I do and what I'm doing. So I put a little quick video together to kind of show you.
No one taught me how to deal with family issues and hard experiences. I was introduced to drugs at just 11 years old. After spiraling out of control, I ended up in prison for a crime I did not commit, but one I was absolutely responsible for. Well, I'm your bad dream. But here's the good news. Now you get a second chance. I'm about to tell you the hard truth behind drugs that you have never heard before.
It should have been me laying there, not her.
I would do anything to hug you.
Alcohol, nicotine,
vaping,
marijuana,
Cocaine.
heroin, farm music.
These are the consequences of making bad choices in life. This is how you have to visit your son.
12 years after doing my time, I committed the rest of my life to preventing drug abuse, traveling around the country.
Because there is hope.
8.5 years later, I am still clean and living a life that I could have never imagined.
Making their test become a testimony. I want to share some of these stories with you. I am Michael Deleon, and this is Straight Talk.
So I call it straight talk for a reason, because I don't sugarcoat it. I never use profanity in school or anything like that, but I keep it very real, because kids want real. One of my favorite sayings of all time came from Teddy Roosevelt, a motivational speaker by the name of Zig Ziglar coined the term, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So I changed people to kids. It's especially true for kids. Kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So I want kids to understand, number one, I care. Number two, I know what I'm talking about. But number three, the biggest reason that I'm there is not to tell kids drugs are bad. Not to say don't do drugs. Just say no, it doesn't work, right? I want them to understand they have to make the choice and they have to make the decision. But when it comes to marijuana, when it comes to vaping, nicotine, marijuana, alcohol, those three gateway drugs, those three starters, that most kids begin with those three drugs based on bad information. Come on, alcohol's no big deal, everybody's drinking it. Marijuana's a plant. One kid told me it comes from God, right? Vaping is safer than cigarettes. That it was invented to help people quit smoking. And all those are untruths. They're all untruths. Vaping, nicotine, tobacco products, cigarettes is legal in our country in all 50 states, 21 years of age and older. The drinking age in all 50 states is 21. The marijuana age in the states that have legalized for recreational or medical purposes is 21. So it's not legal for 20 in any state. So you can't argue with me. This is about children. I don't have an opinion about adults. Ask my wife, I'm barely an adult myself. So I don't tell adults what to do with their lives. If you're an adult, you can drink, God bless you. My wife is one of those people. She can have a glass of wine, and she's got these things called wine stoppers. I never knew what they were for. She puts it back in the bottle and puts the bottle back in the refrigerator. I'm like, babe, there's more wine in the bottle. What are you doing? She's like, you don't drink the whole bottle at once. Oh, I thought you did, right? See, that's why I'm an alcoholic and she's not. She could drink alcohol responsibly. I'm not one of those people. Marijuana is, used by some adults. If you are an adult and you want to use marijuana and you believe in the marijuana's benefits, then you're an adult. I don't tell adults how to be adults. Tobacco products is the #1 cause of death in America. It's killing more people in this world. 7 million people a year die globally from tobacco products. So I wouldn't recommend it. But if you're an adult, I do not tell adults how to live their lives. This is about children. This is about adolescents. And that's where it begins, as an adolescent. So that prison cell was where I spent the last 5 years of my incarceration. I was in 6 different prisons over 12 years, and there was 22 different prison cells. That was the cell I was in at the end. So, not to get into my whole story, I asked the last 5 years of my incarceration to get involved in a program called Scared Straight. So I ran that program in prison for 5 years. I worked on the TV show for 5 seasons. It was on for 9 seasons, but it was negative reinforcement. The episode I showed you was a little bit different than 90% of all the episodes, because it was our job to scare the kids, scream at them, and threaten, right? It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's all that negative reinforcement. So when I said every Sunday in the process group that doesn't work, we're wasting these kids' time, we're wasting our time, they used to tell me, listen, when you get out of prison, you can start your own program. So I would sit there and I'd be like, you know what? When I get out of prison, I'm going to start my own program. So I got out of prison and I founded Steered Straight in 2007. Not Scared Straight, Steered Straight. So I got on the phone and I started calling some principals. Yes, good morning. I just got out of prison. I'd like to come by and talk to your children. Hello? Hello? Babe, he hung up on me. She's like, call another one. Yes, good morning. I just got out of prison. I'd like to come by and talk to your hello? I got a lot of dial tones. I got hung up on. Who'd want the ex-convict anywhere schools, right? But when it comes to drugs, crime, gangs, violence, there's nobody better. Not just me, people who are like me, that not only overcame every obstacle, overcame their addiction, overcame incarceration, but dedicated their life to make sure that they don't follow in my footsteps. Most people who follow in my footsteps don't make it. So I do not want kids to get started. The only way we're going to end addiction in America is to prevent it from starting in the first place. And the only place we can do that is with our children. So I want to get to the kids. I have different messages for elementary school, middle school, and high school. I can even break high school down into freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors separately. And then I want to talk to staff. And then I want to talk to you. Because the African proverb that it takes a village is something that we speak, but it's not something that we do. We don't educate the village. Now, I know that this night was offered to an entire school district. I know that there's probably 18 to 20,000 students within this area and region, and they probably all have at least one parent, right? So where's all the parents? And I know in many ways, those of you who are here, I'm preaching to the choir. You're here because you're involved in your child's life. I'm not minimizing the importance of soccer or whatever else is going on. I'm not minimizing the involvement in your children's life if they're involved in some other extracurricular activity. But this is a crisis of epic proportions, and I don't believe we're taking it very seriously. I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat, so I don't get involved or involve myself with politics. But we have a crisis with fentanyl poisoning, and I'm going to show you how bad this is, and I want you to understand. Tonight I wanted to talk to you about marijuana and vaping primarily, but because Indiana was just recently named the 9th state in America where the #1 cause of death for children 20 and below is fentanyl poisoning, I want to talk to you about fentanyl. As I watch the coverage of fentanyl on the news, or sometimes people are doing extra shows on fentanyl, the discussion on fentanyl, I don't see the explanation of what this is all about. How did it start and where are we? And I think that you need to know that. So I'm going to squeeze in explanation on fentanyl. I don't know if this has ever happened to you. You're driving your car and the check engine light goes on, right? Well, you don't keep driving. You get it checked out, unless you're my wife, and then you leave the light on for 8 months. But you get the engine checked out, because it could be a minor thing like the gas cap could be loose, or it could be a major thing. You might have a new engine you got to buy, right? It's a warning light on your dashboard. So based on my 47 years of personal experience, my addiction began at the age of 11 years of age. And it started with 3 things: nicotine, alcohol, and marijuana. And I was on pills by 13, I was on cocaine at 15 years of age, I was on heroin at 16, and I was on meth at 18 years of age. So I spiraled out of control till 28, when I ended up going to prison. Based on my 47 years of personal experience, we're creating the next generation of addicts. It's exactly what we're doing. We're not watching it happen. It's not unfolding before our eyes. We're not like, oops, this is being created. And I hope that you feel that way when this is over. I want to tell you about fentanyl before I get into marijuana and nicotine. Fentanyl is a crisis. It's the #1 cause of death in America, 18 to 45. You will see in March that number will change to 13 to 45. So what is this all about? Kids are dying. I'm sure you've seen news coverage about counterfeit fentanyl pills, counterfeit rainbow fentanyl pills. It's all across the country. Every single state in America has reported the confiscation and the presence of fentanyl counterfeit pills. So you have to ask yourself why a kid would go off and take a pill that's not prescribed to them. Why would a kid take a pill from someone that they didn't even know, somebody they met on Snapchat or Instagram, right? Why would they take a pill from some kid in school? It doesn't make any sense. And I'll tell you why. It's because kids think medication is safe. Systemically, kids think medication is safe. And that's because when they're children, when they're toddlers, to get them to take their medicine, we tell them it's candy. We tell kids medicine is candy. I don't know anybody, any parent that doesn't try to give their kid cough syrup or whatever and it tastes nasty and tell them it's candy, right? We even flavor children's Tylenol to get them to take it. That we never really have a conversation with them when they're 5, 6, 7 years of age. Remember I told you about candy and medicine is candy? Yeah, we were fibbing to you, okay? It's not candy. And we never really talk to our children about the seriousness of medication, the importance of medication, but the seriousness of it, that you never take medication from anybody else. You never take a pill from anybody else. If some kid has a pill, wants to share a pill with you, absolutely not, because you don't know where it's from. And you don't know it's not prescribed for you, so you don't even know what it is. In the past couple of years, we used to have farm parties, they called them, P-H-A-R-M, pharmaceutical parties, where kids would come bring pills and put them in a bowl. And kids would just put their hands in a bowl and take pills, like Russian roulette, and out of control. And kids were actually dying, getting poisoned, going to hospitals. Poison control was being called because we didn't have any idea what our kids took, right? They made some PSA commercials about it, and it kind of didn't die down, but the attention and the focus on it went away. Well, kids think medication and pills is candy. It's why they are so susceptible and so easily picking up and commonly picking up pills that are not prescribed for them. And I was watching a movie with my wife one night, and there was a line in the movie. We're in the theater, and we're watching this movie, and there's a little girl in this movie. She's the funniest little girl, funniest little character you ever saw. Every word that came out of her mouth, every phrase that came out of her mouth was so hysterical, right? So we're watching this movie, and there's a line in the movie that I turn to my wife, and she turns to me, and we both simultaneously say, "Did you hear that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I heard that." This kind of helps explain a little bit why 80% of social media advertising is pharmaceutical funding. We not only have a conversation with our kids telling them that medication is candy, we not only never tell them a conversation that it's not, but then our kids get inundated with commercials. And these commercials are raging through Saturday morning cartoons and Saturday morning television, right? Our kids are seeing all these pharmaceutical commercials. And what message is it sending to them? That there's a chemical solution to a spiritual problem. There's a pill for this, there's a pill for that. There's not a pill for this and a pill for that. If a doctor says there's a pill for you, this or a pill for that, it's up to the doctor. But kids are using pills that are not prescribed to them, and they absolutely do not understand the seriousness of the consequences of the pills that they might put in their mouth. So, we have a whole prescription drug crisis of abuse all throughout our country. And kids are sometimes just taking pills because their friends say, yeah, these are prescribed to me and they help with my anxiety. These are prescribed to me because they help with my depression. About 3 to 4 weeks ago in Chipman Junior High School in Bakersfield, California, a 7th grade student brings 150 fake counterfeit Percocets to school. Now, the security guard caught him before he had a chance to sell any to kids, thank God. But while the security guard was handling the fentanyl pills, the fumes and the dust from the fentanyl was getting into his respiratory system. And he went out. He overdosed on what was being ingested into his respiratory system. It was minutes before another staff member was aware of it, and then another minutes before 911 got there with the naloxone, the Narcan, to bring him back from the dead, right? Narcan naloxone is a very important tool, and it's all over our country, except in California schools. It's not mandated to be in schools. Well, it was 6 to 8 minutes before 911 got to this man, and he passed away. This security guard died in school off the inhalation of what was in his hands and in this kid's bag that was in this 7th grader's book bag. And this isn't the first time that I've seen this happen in middle schools and high schools all around the country. So, kids think medication is safe. We have to have these conversations. Often people say, when is it too early to start talking to kids about this kind of stuff? Well, it's never too early. You don't talk to 3rd and 4th graders about fentanyl and heroin, but you start the conversation very, very young. Now, we're not having enough of these conversations, and parents aren't talking to their kids enough about it. No parent wants their child to be a drug addict. No parent wants their child to struggle with addiction, end up in jail or prison, or die in their 20s. So the conversations are not something that many parents, many families have on a regular basis. So my father used to say, yeah, I remember I had the drug talk with you. The drug talk. So one talk, dad, one talk, right? It's not one talk, it's an ongoing conversation. So teenagers should eat dinner with their families 5 nights a week. It's the gold standard. You have to eat dinner with your kids 5 nights a week. Teenagers who infrequently eat dinner as a family are 4 times more likely to underage drink and use drugs. And the reason for that is because teenagers need to get the truth from you, from guardians, from parents. The conversation, the facts, the truth need to come from you. Not their friends, not TikTok and Instagram, not the playground. The truth needs to come from you. Not the internet either. I mean, if you go on YouTube and you type in marijuana video, you'll get 14,000 videos. And 13,995 of them are positive, okay? Why? Because there's an agenda at work. The agenda is addiction, and they're trying to addict our children. So, every prevention organization in the country, I only list a few right there, every prevention organization in the country uses that as the gold standard. 5 dinners a week. And I was telling parents this, and I was saying, you know, to my wife, I don't even think parents can eat dinner with their kids 5 nights a week. I mean, this isn't Ozzie and Harriet days. This is 2021, 2022, right? I don't think parents can eat dinner with their kids 5 nights a week. If you can, God bless you, right? But if you can't, does that mean you're a bad parent? Absolutely not. So my wife said, well, it's not the dinner anyway. It's the conversation. So stop telling parents to eat dinner with their kids 5 nights a week and start telling them to have 5 conversations. So I switched up. That's exactly what I started doing. Forget the dinners. If you can have 5 dinners, 3 dinners, 4 dinners, do it. But if you can't, have 5 conversations, maybe 2 breakfasts, a lunch, and 2 dinners. Maybe a couple of those conversations are in the car and you have a dashboard conversation. And when I say a conversation, I don't mean a half-hour talk. I mean a 3-minute talk. And if you have 5 of those a week, that's 15 minutes. I'll probably need water. You need to eat dinner with your kids if you can. But as long as you're having 5 conversations, that's what needs to happen. Have 5 conversations with your kid. But if I got up here and I started talking about shatter and dab and JUUL and Mr. Fog, you know what Mr. Fogs are? You know what breezes are? So if you don't know what's going on, if you don't know what these kids have in their hands, if you don't know what they're being exposed to, how can you have the conversations? So, right before COVID hit, my wife and I sat down and we wrote a book. We wrote a book about conversations. This is every conversation you need to have with your kid, middle school and high school. 260 conversations, that's 5 a week for 52 weeks. Then I added extra, 104 family field trips for the weekends. There's 364 conversations that you can have with your kids. 364 conversations, I gave you Christmas off. So a whole year of conversations. And then in COVID, my wife and I sat down and I tripled the book. I tripled it, so it's not a year. This book contains 3 years of conversations that you need to have with your children, with your nieces, your grandchildren, right now, all addressing 2022 drug trends, 2022 contributing factors to addiction, 2022 post-COVID anxiety and depression, how to handle it, connection. This is a book that every parent, every mentor needs to raise their kids and increase protective factors and decrease risk factors. It's on Amazon, it's on our website, it's $20. I'm not trying to peddle books. If you know some parent that really could use this book, and they don't even have $20, we'll send it to them for free. I'll even pay the postage. That's why I'm trying to sell books, because we're sending out 40 to 50 books a week free of charge to people. And so this book is invaluable. It'll be the best $20 you ever spent in your life. I tell you right now, it'll change the conversations you're having with your children. One of the things that the book explains is that drug addiction is not about drugs. I know that sounds crazy. Drug addiction is not about drugs. Drug addiction is about the brain. And the 3 drugs I want you to look at differently than you ever have before is alcohol, nicotine, and marijuana. So you know, these are the 3 drugs that 95% of every person who struggles with addiction in their life, these are the 3 drugs that 95% of them start with. Alcohol, nicotine, and marijuana. So, alcohol is a depressant. It's what it is. Nicotine is a stimulant. THC, the psychoactive molecule in the cannabis plant, is a hallucinogen. So the kids aren't drinking, they're depressing their brain. They're not just vaping, they're stimulating the development of their brain. They're not just smoking weed, they're hallucinating their brain's development, while it's developing. So I have a video I'd like to share with you a little bit more about truth.
They said if I got drunk, if I did coke, I'd be one of the guys. They said meth would help me get through my exams.
They said sipping glue was no big deal.
Totally safe.
I could party all night. They said heroin would be the best high I ever had.
It would help me forget my problems.
He said he'd love me forever if I smoked crack with him.
They said I wouldn't get hooked after the first hit.
They said that Ritalin would help me focus.
They said weed wouldn't leave the heart of drugs.
They lied. They lied. They lied.
He lied. I know the truth about drugs.
Drugfreeworld.org.
Drugfreeworld.org.
So the truth about drugs is that drugs are a lie, and that's what I'm trying to get kids to understand. Because I don't know if you understand this, kids hate lying. Kids don't like being lied to. Kids really don't like being lied to, and they'd rather have the truth. And they're being lied to about drugs. They're being lied to about drugs. And so I want to give them the truth. Now, what you see on the screen is the cause of death for everyone in America. That was 2019. 2022 is identical, right? This is the cause of death for everyone in our country. And heart disease is number 1. Cancer is number 2. And respiratory disease is number 3. Respiratory disease. Now, the reason why respiratory disease is number 3 is because people have been smoking for 30, 40, 50 years. That's why. But for adolescents, 15 to 24, it's now number 6, which doesn't make any sense. Because the reason it's number 3 for all people is because people have been smoking 30, 40, 50 years. But how could it be possibly number 6? It's jumped 10 spots in 12 years, right? How could it be, 22 years. Number 6, respiratory disease. It's because of vaping, and it's because of marijuana legalization. Because our kids are vaping. Our 6th graders, our 7th graders, our 8th graders. I got a vape from a 2nd grader a couple weeks ago. I have schools calling me, asking me to come talk to their 3rd and 4th graders, and usually I do bullying. We have this thing called Racer with K to 3, and they're like, no, we want you to talk about vaping to our 3rd and 4th graders. You want me to talk about vaping to your 3rd and 4th graders? Yeah, because our 3rd and 4th graders are vaping. The reason why respiratory disease is exploding among our young people is because of vaping and marijuana legalization. Now, the number 1 cause of death for kids in 9 states, 20 and below, is now fentanyl poisoning. So if you look at these causes, accidents is number 1, right? Accidents is number 1, but that's misleading because 80% of accidents are in a car. And 80% of the car accidents, the driver was under the influence of drugs and alcohol. So it wasn't an accident, it was a drunk or drunk driving accident. Suicide is number 2. Homicide is number 3. Unfortunately for African Americans, those numbers are flipped. Homicide is 2 and suicide is 3. Now, I'm not saying there has never been one, but in hundreds of adolescent suicides and homicides that I've investigated and looked at, I've never seen one that wasn't drug and alcohol related. Never, not one. A suicide or a homicide. Either they were on psych drugs or antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication, or they were on some other sort of prescription drug, or that it was about weed, or it was over alcohol, or it was over drugs. The person who did the shooting was on drugs. The person who died was on drugs. It was a drug-related suicide or a drug-related homicide. And number 4 is an overdose or poisoning. So when people say to me, Michael, the number 4 cause of death for kids in America at 27 and below is drugs and alcohol, I say, no, it's not. It's 1, it's 2, it's 3, and it's 4. And number 6, right behind childhood cancer, is because of drugs, because of the inhalation of nicotine and THC through electronic devices. Now, recently, this past spring, the American government, the CDC, announced that more people died in the last 12 months than any 12 months in American history. We lost 108,000 people to an overdose of drugs, right? Well, what they didn't say, it was the 12th straight year of the worst 12 months in American history. It wasn't the worst year in American history. It was the 12th straight year of the worst year in American history. And this year will be the largest increase of poisoning and overdose death America's ever seen. Largest increase will be this year. So right after that happened, they announced between 18 and 45 that fentanyl poisoning had become the #1 cause of death in America. Fentanyl poisoning, #1 cause of death in our country. Not #1 cause of drug death, #1 cause of death. It's mind-boggling. So I decided I was going to do a movie about it. It's coming out in May, unless I can get it done sooner. It's called Fake and Fatal. I'm really trying to get it done by February because it's like, this is a crisis, right? But I promise you, this is the beginning of the crisis. That picture on the right-hand side, I took in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania at a police station. That picture right there by that keyboard, I took that picture at the Maricopa County drug locker. That's 2 bags of raw fentanyl on the police detective's keyboard. Now, what was happening was, 2000, 2002, 2004, fentanyl started to become imported into America, and it was going into heroin to make heroin more potent. This fentanyl powder was coming into our country, hitting both coasts mostly, and the purpose was to make heroin more potent, to get heroin addicts hooked. Okay. There was an escalation in the early 2000s. There was the largest global bust in the world history in Mexico, where there was a big lab, a Chinese lab in Mexico that was shut down. The president of Mexico took it very seriously, and he wasn't the president of Mexico in 2014 when everything changed. And all this stuff started to increase again. Look at the escalation of fentanyl, right? That's pretty dramatic, right? So I was doing this in New Jersey, showing people the escalation of heroin. Look at how heroin escalated, but look how fentanyl escalated. This came on like a storm, and it's worse than ever. So I went on Anderson Cooper in 2017 with 2 DEA representatives, and it was a small show, right? And the show was about pill press machines. They were flooding into our country. Pill press machines, flooding across the border. And he was like, well, why would we get pill press machines in our country? And it's a good question, right? So here's the answer. If I take this fentanyl right here, and I take a little tiny bit of that fentanyl in that bag, and I put it in a bag of heroin, and I sell it on the street for $10. In Chicago, Detroit, Atlanta, $5, right? But if I take that same amount of fentanyl, and I put it into a pill, and I press it, and I make it look like an OxyContin, now I could sell it on the street for $40, $50. Percocet's $30. Why would I want to sell a little tiny piece of it for $5 when I could put it into a pill and sell it for $50, right? It's economics. So I bought that pill press machine right there, that blue one. I bought it on Amazon.com. I bought this one at Walmart.com. And if you don't believe me, you can take your phone out and you can go to Google and Google pill press machine. There's a great one for $4.99 from MadeInChina.com. DHL will send it to your house with 0 shipping, free shipping charges, right? They'll also give you 3 free molds. So say if you want to make an Adderall pill or a Xanax pill or an ibuprofen, they'll send you the mold. Go to your Amazon search and type in pill press machine on Amazon. And Amazon will send one right to your Decatur, Illinois house. You can start making pills on your dining room table. Now, I've asked Republicans and I've asked Democrats, why would we allow pill press machines to be imported into our country? Nobody can answer me this question. So I started making pills with the DEA and with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, and I got very good. You couldn't tell the difference between a real pill and the one that I made. So these are all pills that came out of backpacks at our border. Men's backpacks in San Luis, Yuma, and Nogales, Mexico. We're no longer really seeing the massive amount of powder coming into our country. We're seeing the massive amount of pills because the cartels decided to press the pills themselves on the other side of the border. I took this picture. This guy's backpack had 10 of those bags and 10 of these bags walking across our southern border. If you're in a rowboat or in a canoe and you're going down the river and you hit a rock, you got a big hole in your boat. So you grab your bucket and you start throwing the water out of your boat. You could keep going and keep throwing the water out, but if you don't stop the leak, you're gonna sink. I don't care how fast you are, the water's coming in. If you don't stop it from coming in, It doesn't matter how much you throw out. This is not a political issue. I know some people want to politicize it. This is not a Republican or a Democrat or an immigration issue. This is a cartel issue. Importing these pills into our country in massive amounts, and the kids are getting them. The kids are getting them. So I went to interview for my movie Sheriff Mark Lamb in Pinell County, Arizona. And he interviewed with me because they had just announced that the #1 cause of death in Pinell County had become fentanyl poisoning for kids. And I couldn't believe it. He told me, I'm not even the first. Go to Pima County. So I went to Tucson, and they told me the same thing. It was in a newspaper article that I didn't even see because it was in a local newspaper article. It didn't even make national news. So I worked with a friend of mine, Jasmine Ramirez, who's an investigative reporter, and we found, with the DEA, we found all the confiscated fentanyl pills in 2021 in all 50 states. And what we showed was 2/3 of every counterfeit confiscated fentanyl pill in America in all 50 states was confiscated in the state of Arizona. We couldn't understand how that was possible. It's because that's where it's coming in. It's not because Arizona cops are so great. It's because that's where it's coming in. And now, according to HIDTA, the Division of the Justice Department, High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area, now it's 80%. So we started this investigation, we gave it to them, and they did the investigation and found out it was worse. 80% of all the counterfeit pills coming into our country, that are in our country, confiscated in all 50 states, are coming in the state of Arizona. So this is a crisis, and if we don't stop it where it's coming in, we're not going to stop it. Last December, this was a big confiscation in Scottsdale, Arizona, 1.7 million fentanyl pills. That didn't even make the top 25 in Arizona for 2021. 1.7 million pills, and that doesn't even make your top 25 confiscations. This is a massive problem. These two girls from ASU were going into Mexico twice a week to pick up collagen boxes, but it wasn't collagen. They were stuffed with 500,000 fentanyl pills twice a week, every week for 4 months before they got caught. It's massive, and these pills are killing us. So, Illinois has had a 770% increase in fentanyl death from 2015 to 2021. 778% increase, 9,206. It's in the top 10. And now, cause of death among adolescents is now #9. So, as you can see, it's every state. This is a 17-year-old girl named Faith from Chillicothe, Missouri, who died from a fake Xanax pill. The girl thought it was a Xanax pill, but it wasn't. It was fentanyl. This girl, 16 years of age from Bakersfield, California, 16, beautiful little light-skinned girl. She didn't think it was a poison. She wouldn't have taken it. We have to make our kids aware. That kid, he was graduating as a junior. Zachary was graduating as a junior from high school. And he thought it was an Adderall pill. He needed to, take this exam, this ACT, and his friend gave him an Adderall pill. The friend actually even told him, yeah, they're mine, I get it. So Zachary took them. That's why we have to talk to our kids. Even if your friend gives you a pill, you can't take it. You can't take it. Kids are dying. And I hate that phrase, kids are dying. But it was the name, let me real quick. Rainbow pills. It's not new, but it's exploded. I took this picture in Michigan. I took this picture at a police station. Those are all fentanyl rainbow pills. In fact, 2 weeks ago, 2 men from Baltimore, Maryland were caught in Hartford, Connecticut with these Skittles bags and these Nerds boxes with those fentanyl pills. They were putting the pills in candy boxes. Someone said, well, they were probably just doing that for smuggling purposes. Okay, yeah, they've really gone to a lot of trouble to print bags and boxes of candy. This is a scary, scary time, but this is reality. This is reality. So African Americans are dying at double the rate of Caucasians from fentanyl. And there's been 2 articles on this since January, both of them on NPR. I do not believe our African American community is being informed that this is a crisis that's hitting Black America at double the rate, not double the amount, but double the rate of white America. I don't think that's discussed, and I think it's pretty damn important, because kids are dying. Now that term, kids are dying, I used for my first movie. I've worked on a lot of projects, I've worked on a lot of films, but I never made my own film until this one. It was 2010, kids were dying from heroin. New Jersey was an epidemic, Pennsylvania was an epidemic. In fact, my best friend's daughter, Amber, died of a heroin overdose. She was 21 years of age. And I made this movie to try to explain how an amazing girl like her could die of a heroin overdose. So I went to this little city near where I lived called Camden, New Jersey. And I got out of my car and I started walking down the street looking for a heroin addict. And it took me like 30 seconds. So I walked up to her. Her name's Christina. She was living in this abandoned house right here. And I said, hey, I'm making a documentary film. I'm going into schools to talk to kids about drugs. She said, you're going to talk to kids about this? And I said, yes. You're going to show this to kids? I said, yes. So she pulled up her arm sleeves. She said, here, show kids this. Now, I don't know how old she looks to you in this picture. She's 21. 21 years of age. Now, that beautiful girl, 3 years earlier, walked across her high school graduation stage to accept valedictorian of her graduating class. Christina was top of her class in high school. She had a full scholarship to Temple University. She became a cheerleader for the Temple Owls. She fell off a pyramid at a football game, and she fractured her tailbone. They rushed her to the hospital, and the ER doctor put her on Percocet and morphine liquid. The pain doctor added Vicodin on Monday. So she got addicted to the opioids within a couple of weeks. So she started to see a second doctor, a third doctor, a fourth doctor, a fifth one. And once all 5 doctors found out about each other, they cut her off. They cut her off. She was addicted to the opioids and they cut her off. So she walked 10 blocks down to a section of Philadelphia called Kensington, and she picked up some heroin. And that took 1 month. 1 month later, she was shooting 30 bags of heroin a day. The girl who was valedictorian of her high school graduating class that had the scholarship to Temple, 3 years and 9 weeks later, 9 weeks after I interviewed her, she was dead. 3 years and 9 weeks later, she died of a heroin overdose. So did Brian, so did Molly, so did Crystal. Those are the first 4 kids I interviewed on day 1. They all died before the film came out. But I didn't quit, I kept going. 137 heroin addicts, homeless, I interviewed on the streets of Camden in 10 months. And 121 of them, 88% of them, were addicted to opioids before they were addicted to heroin. That's what everybody was talking about. Opioids leads to heroin. Well, every single one of them had something else in common. Not 88% of them, not 121, every one, 137 out of 137. Before the age of 18, alcohol, nicotine, and marijuana. I brought you this way because I wanted to get to this point. If the principal called you and said your son or daughter got caught in school today with a bottle of water, but it didn't have water, it had vodka, you would be upset, yes? If the principal called you and said your son or daughter got caught in school today with a pack of cigarettes or a vape pen, you'd be upset. If the principal called you and said your son or daughter got caught in school today with marijuana or a vape cartridge with marijuana, you'd be upset. But I wonder how upset you would be if the principal said your son or daughter got caught in school today with 5 bags of heroin, a hypodermic needle, and a tourniquet. Now, your eyes went up a lot higher on that one than the other ones. I want you as parents to be as concerned about alcohol, nicotine, and marijuana like you would be about heroin. Like, I made this post a couple weeks ago. I'd like to change the name of fentanyl to anthrax. Because I think if we started talking about anthrax, maybe people would pay attention. Fentanyl is the #1 cause of death in our country. You will see in March 13 to 45, the #1 overall cause of death in our country. And I don't believe we're really taking it too seriously. I want parents, you to understand all addiction, okay? I'll say all, 95% of all addiction begins with 3 substances. And our kids think those 3 substances are a joke. And so do many parents. So 90% of drug and alcohol abusers began as a teenager. 90%, that's accepted coast to coast. 95% of that 90% starts with 3 substances: alcohol, nicotine, and marijuana. 90% start in their teens. So when I put that movie, Kids Are Dying, out, I got a phone call from a mom in Covington, Kentucky. She said, "You think New Jersey's bad, come to Kentucky." So I went to Kentucky. And then I went to 29 more states. I went to 30 states and I interviewed 500 parents who lost their kids to an overdose of drugs. 500. Heroin. They buried their kid of heroin. So I asked them all, I said, before 18, did your son or daughter drink alcohol? 500 said yes. Before the age of 18, did your son or daughter smoke weed? 500 said yes. Before the age of 18, did your son or daughter smoke cigarettes, chew tobacco, or vape? And 500 said yes. It was so compelling to me, I was devastated. I was blown away. It wasn't $4.99, it wasn't $4.98, it was $500. Every parent that I interviewed in 30 states that buried their kid to an overdose of drugs, their kids used alcohol, nicotine, and marijuana before the age of 18. And I'm not just picking out 3 things, because I bet they all drank milk, I bet they all ate chocolate, I bet they all ate cereal. We're talking about a depressant, a hallucinogen, and a stimulant on the developing brain. So, while I was filming that movie, I was in Boulder, Colorado, when marijuana went legal in Denver and Washington. And so I couldn't believe what I was seeing, so I made a movie. Now all these movies, they're on my card, I'll give you my card at the end, but they're all on YouTube and you can watch them all. I put this movie out, Marijuana X. I call it Marijuana X because it's not marijuana anymore. And I walked into a marijuana dispensary, a store selling marijuana. And those 2 little vials were sitting on the counter, and the sign over the vials said liquid weed. And I asked the kid behind the counter, "Excuse me, bro, what's liquid weed?" He said, "Now you can vape it." "How do you vape it? It's a plant." "Weed's a plant." He said, "So is tobacco." I said, "Good point, thanks. Listen, explain this to me." So he explained the whole extraction process. So I bought the vials, and I bought the mod, and I went to my friend at the DEA in Denver, and he sent it off for testing. And when it came back, they knocked on my door one night and wanted to know where I got it. And I took them there the next day, and it tested positive at 86%. The THC level in those vials was 86% in 2015. Now, THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, Delta-9, is the one psychoactive molecule in the cannabis plant that gets you high. Man. It was 1%. It was first tested, University of Mississippi, it was first tested in 1960. It was 1%. So, over the years, we started increasing its potency. Woodstock, Cheech and Chong, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Snoop Dogg, Dre's Chronic. Okay, here we get all the way to 2011, and marijuana potency gets up to 11.4%. 11.4, 2011, highest tested marijuana potency in America in 2011, 11.4%. Marijuana goes legal in Colorado right there, and it went from 12 to 37 in 2 years. Took 51 years to get from 1 to 12. It took 2 years to get from 12 to 37. Now, the same year that they announced that the highest potent marijuana in America was 37%, I handed those vials to the DEA and they tested positive at 86. So 37 was flower, was the plant, 37. But the extracted resins and waxes and oils and vapes was higher, 86%. So, in steps big tobacco. And the marijuana industry is controlled by big tobacco, right? And that right there is big tobacco's strategy. It's been their strategy for 80 years. And right in the middle of their strategy is target kids. And that's exactly what they're doing again. Targeting kids is how the tobacco industry has become a $1.2 trillion industry. So in 1994, Congress held some hearings, and they wanted to hold big tobacco accountable. So they bring big tobacco into Washington for the tobacco and health hearings, and the top 7 tobacco executives are sitting at a table in front of the hearing committee. And a congressman from Oregon, Ron Wyden, he asks the tobacco executives a question. This is 1994. Listen to the question that the congressman asks these tobacco executives, but listen to their answers.
Yes or no? Do you believe nicotine is not addictive?
I believe nicotine is not addictive, yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Congressman, cigarettes and nicotine clearly do not meet the classic definitions of addiction.
I don't believe that nicotine or our products are addictive.
I believe nicotine is not addictive.
I believe that nicotine is not addictive.
I believe that nicotine is not addictive. And I too believe that nicotine is not addictive.
So I say to the kids, remember them? And they're like, oh, yeah, of course not. They weren't here. Were they lying? And the kids say yes. I said, no, were they lying? And all the kids say yes. They were lying. Now, we knew that they were lying. I don't know if you're my age, but we knew that they were lying, right? Now they're lying to our kids, except it's flavored. And the federal government's not paying attention. They started to pay attention, but now they're limited, and I'll explain why. So Altria is the largest vaping company in the world. R.J. Reynolds is the second largest vaping company in the world. Altria is owned by China Tobacco, and R.J. Reynolds is owned by British American Tobacco. #1 and #2 tobacco conglomerate in the world. Owns the #1 and #2 vaping company. This was never invented to help people quit smoking. This was invented to save big tobacco. This was invented to hook the next generation of children. And when they did this 80 years ago, 60 years ago, 50 years ago, it wasn't flavored. Now it's flavored and put in vibrant little metal devices that fit in kids' pockets that look like thumb drives, and we're in a crisis. So I took that mod, that first one I bought, I took it apart. I've taken 83 vapes apart. Now, some vapes have a couple extra components in it, but every vape has 3. There's a reservoir canister at the bottom where the e-liquid goes, the e-juice, or a pod, POD, or a cartridge takes its place. That's component #1. Component #2 is a battery. You have to have a battery for a vape to work. Sometimes they blow up in people's faces. But the key to the vape is the heating element. It's called an atomizer. It's taking, when you put a vape in your mouth and you inhale it, you suck it in. The battery powers the coils in the atomizer to heat up, and it takes the wax, the oil, the liquid out of the reservoir canister or the cartridge, and it heats it up to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. 200 degrees Fahrenheit. So it vapors out of the device and it aerosols into your respiratory system. When it goes into the respiratory system, it goes in as a volatile organic compound. It's a VOC. It's a toxin. And little molecular particles of metal in all of these cartridges, little molecular particles of plastic, of rubber, and all the chemicals in the device and in the cartridge and the pot and the liquid are entering the respiratory system. This was never invented to help people quit smoking because big tobacco wouldn't have invented it. They came out with cigalites, they called them, little vapes that looked like cigalites. Notice they're not really around anymore. Why? Because they weren't popular. Kids didn't want to take a vape that looked like a cigarette, so they sleeked them. They made them like this, made them colorful, and put flavors in them. They put flavors in them so they could hook kids. And that's exactly what they did. And they made hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of flavors. This was about marketing to our children. Now, when that hearing happened in 1994, 34% of high school students were smoking cigarettes. 34%. Most of you don't remember. We used to have high school smoking lounges. We had smoking lounges in our high schools. In my school, you got 3 minutes to get from class to class. If you were a smoker with parental permission, you got 5 minutes so you can go to the smoking lounge for 2 hours. Smoking lounges in high schools. I say that to kids, they look at me like I'm crazy. Okay, so that's why 34%, a third of every kid in school smoked cigarettes. We took $1 billion and we put it into an educational campaign, and we made every state in America teach high school students what tobacco does to the brain and what tobacco does to the body. And look at that red line. Look what happened. This is high school smokers. It plummeted to 7% in 2015. I'm not sure if you can recognize what this means. This is the end of the tobacco industry. Big tobacco is done. I hate to say this, but all the smokers are gonna die. If there's no teenagers to take their place, big tobacco is done. So in 2011, they see the writing on the wall and they're like, the vape comes out. And now 70% of all vaping nicotine, 70% of all nicotine is consumed through an electronic device. And 70% of electronic devices are purchased by kids 20 years of age and younger. 20 years of age and younger. So the Obama administration, with all due respect, did nothing. And they kicked the can to the Trump administration. The Trump administration, with all due respect, did nothing. The only thing the Trump administration did do was they made vaping products, tobacco products 21, federally. And I was like, what do you think that's gonna do? Well, if it's 21, kids can't get it. Oh, right, because no kids can get alcohol, right? So that's all they did. They made it 21 years of age. Now, there was a big announcement by the FDA under Trump, okay? And it was right before the switch. Oh no, it wasn't. It was not right before the switch. January 2020. They announced they were gonna ban flavors. It was huge. It was press conferences. Every news covered it. We're gonna ban flavors. Yet they didn't. They said they were doing it. It fell through. It never happened. So the Biden administration recently, their FDA, took it seriously. This past summer, on June 23rd, I don't know why that date's not up there, on June 23rd it was announced that JUUL had 10 days to take all their products off the shelf. They were gonna shut it down. Well, the very next day, the courts stepped in and said, you can't do that. So here we are back at square one. And I don't know, I have Google Alerts. I don't know if anybody ever uses Google Alerts. If you want to study something, or you want to find every article on the death penalty, or fracking, or you want to find every article on whatever, you could do a Google Alert for it. So I have a Google Alert on 34 different phrases and words. There's not been any article about FDA ban since this court hearing. It just went away, and no one's talking about it. Okay. So, again, this is how everyone dies in America, and keep in mind, respiratory disorders is the #3 cause of death in our country. So, in October 2019, the CDC announced a name for the vaping death. They had 1,480 people die of EVALI in 2019, e-cigarette vaping associated lung injury. They had a name for it now. Almost 1,500 people died in 2019. If you go to the CDC's website right now and you look up how many people died in 2020 of EVALI, it's 0. How'd they all die? 2020, how'd they all die? COVID. If you go to the CDC's website 2021, how many died of EVALI? 0. So 1,500 people died in 2019, and in 2020 and 2021, no one died of EVALI? Okay. All right, so that's a JUUL. It's the #1 selling device in America. It's the most popular device in America still. It won't be much longer. I'll show you the new one. But this is still the most popular device in America, right? Now those little pods, those PODs cartridges, snap into the JUUL and you ingest the chemicals and the nicotine, synthetic nicotine, into your body. That's a JUUL, and those are JUUL pods. But there's about 80 companies making compatible pods that go in that device. They're even putting CBD, cannabidiol, medicine supposedly, in vaping vials so it can go inside of JUUL devices. And everywhere I go, all around the country, I go into vape shops and I take pictures to see what's going on, what's being sold, and what's flavors, and what they're advertising, what warnings they're putting on, and I take pictures and I try to share it with people. Parents, this is a Soren. It's like a mirror compact, and it can just fit easily into kids' pockets. Sometimes they look like this, pens. You wrap them with little sleeves. Some of them are disposable. These are all looking like thumb drives, the #1 selling device in America. These are all mimicking it, looking like thumb drives, so parents would have thought they were thumb drives. That's a Views with the card at the top of the device, Ceros with the insert inside of it. Again, the JUUL with pods. They're lush ice and watermelon, strawberry, vibrant colors because they're vibrant flavors. Those are puff bars, they're disposable. Enjoy, this is still one of the top selling devices right behind JUUL. This was at your vape shop in Decatur next to the Walmart, Mr. Fog. I got 2 of those today and I got 3 of those yesterday. It's one of the worst ones a kid could use. One of the worst ones anyone could use. But again, I'm here to talk about kids, Mr. Fogs. So smokes, Novo kits, Stizzies, these are disposables. They come in all sorts of different kits. So they're not cheap, okay? They're not cheap. So this is an elf bar. This is going to become the #1 selling device probably before spring. This, and they also make the Mr. Fog. This is the worst one you could use with Mr. Fog. The bill for Illinois, for Middle America, was a great bill. But inside that great bill, the Republicans and the Democrats unanimously implemented the legalization of hemp, H-E-M-P. Fine, hemp is a great product. Compost, paper, rope, animal feed, beer. Hemp has a lot of purposes. But inside of hemp, there are 2 molecules, Delta 8 and Delta 10. Now, they're cousins, they're isomers of Delta 9. I showed you that chart for 51 years, from 1 to 11.4%. Well, in hemp, there's 2 molecules that are even more psychoactive than Delta 9 in cannabis. People said, well, legalizing hemp is no big deal because hemp doesn't get you high. Yeah, hemp gets you high. Now, you would have had to smoke a barrel of hemp to get high, and you would have got sick long before you got high, but not anymore. In 2015, they isolated those 2 molecules, and now we're pulling those 2 molecules out of hemp. And when President Trump signed that bill, he legalized hemp-derived marijuana in all 50 states. Now, we're pulling Delta 8 out of hemp, and we're putting it in cartridges, and we're flavoring it, and we're selling it all over the country. And technically, ladies and gentlemen, there is no age for it. It is technically not a tobacco product. When I go to schools all the time, I ask the kids, where's the plug? You know, it means, where's the shop? Where do you get your vapes? Where's the plug? In almost every school I went to this week, that shop at Walmart parking lot was mentioned. Other ones also, but that shop was, so I went over there 2 nights in a row. I sat outside, I watched kids, and if I wasn't doing this, I think I'd be real good at the age guessing thing at the carnival. I'm pretty good at guessing people's ages, right? Trust me, these kids weren't 21. I went in that shop and he has 21 plus 21 all over the shop. Not supposed to sell it to anybody, any kids, but technically he's allowed to. He's allowed to. I bought that in Tennessee, 92%. I bought it in a gas station. I bought this in Iowa at a 7-Eleven. 7-Eleven selling weed in Iowa. Now, Iowa doesn't have recreational or medical marijuana, and they're selling Delta 8 marijuana in 7-Eleven. This is at your shop over there in Decatur. These are rares. Look, Delta 8, hemp-derived Delta 8. Hemp-derived Delta 8. Look at that one. Durban poison. That sounds great. Where's the Blue Widow? I'll show you in a second. But Durban poison, that sounds great, right? Here's the scary thing. Law enforcement heroes, he can't, there's no test he has. There's no test law enforcement has to tell you if what's coming out of that hemp vape comes from the hemp plant or the cannabis plant. So all the marijuana industry is doing now, if you notice, this has exploded, but the marijuana industry is silent. You hadn't heard a peep out of it. If I was having my market destroyed, I think they'd be raising hell. Why aren't they raising hell? Because this is their market. They've opened up marijuana legalization in all 50 states. And all I gotta do is put on my packaging, hemp derived, and I put cannabis Delta 9 in the product, and no one can test it. No one can test it. This is at your shop over there in Decatur. Drip with us, candy cane. Berry and apple. This is nicotine. This is all nicotine. I mean, it's in the wrong place. Delta 10, super sour diesel, green crack. Green crack. These are vape pens. These are vape pens, more rare pens, okay? 2 pictures of that. I bought those in Georgia at a gas station. I bought that at a truck stop in Idaho. I bought that in Wisconsin. I bought that in Rock Springs, Wyoming. This came from Rock Springs, Wyoming. The triangle is Delta 9 THC. Now it says hemp derived. There are tests that can determine whether it comes from cannabis or hemp, but they're so expensive, nobody's gonna do them. No one's gonna do them. Well, I did. This, and this, I tested. Now, if you look at the top of this packaging, it says THC-O. What THC-O is synthetic THC. There's a little sentence right above the batch number, and it says this product is in compliance with section 10113 of the 2018 Farm Bill, and it contains less than 0.3% THC. So they're even putting on the packaging how they're in compliance with the law. Less than 0.3% THC. That's what the Farm Bill said. If you're gonna put Delta 9 in your product, it has to be less than 0.3%. Look at that nutrition facts box right there. Do you see the first ingredients? Synthetic THC. What percentage does it say it is? 95%. Wait a minute, you told me it was 0.3 and on the same panel, you're telling me it's 95? Here's Apple Gush, 95% synthetic THC, 0.3% Delta 9 THC. Which is it? HHC, that's adding the hydrogen molecule. Hydrogenated weed. Hydrogenated weed. Hydrogenated THC. Less than 0.3% Delta 9 THC. Nope, 95% HHC. So, these were Pop Rocks. I bought them at a souvenir shop on International Drive down the street from Universal Studios. Pop Rocks, blueberry, pomegranate, and strawberry. I bought those in Branson, Missouri at an antiques collectible store. They had, at the front, they had a big glass display case, and they had CBD neon. And I looked down, Delta 8, Delta 10. They're selling weed in Branson, Missouri at a souvenir shop. So a 7th grader in Rockdale County, Georgia this past March brings Skittles to school, and he shares them with his friends. Now, they're not Skittles, but it looks like Skittles. They changed the last S to a Z, and they put the word medicated underneath it. That's Delta 8 THC. It's weed in a candy. Now, this kid brings it to school and shares it with 6 of his friends, and 7th, 6th, and 7th graders are rushed to the hospital. They overdose. Now, the Board of Education comes up, the superintendent of schools is there, law enforcement's there, and everybody's telling the staff, listen, keep your mouth closed, don't say anything, we're gonna investigate this, and we'll talk to the press. So there's this math teacher walking to her car, and there's a reporter that lives in her neighborhood. So he goes and asks her, what's going on? Off the record, what's going on? And so she says, a 7th grader brought fentanyl laced candy to school. 7 kids overdosed, including him, and they were all rushed to the hospital overdosed. So he runs back to the newspaper and he prints the story. And it makes it onto their front page the next day. But that evening, it's on their website and AP picks it up. And that night, Sean Hannity on Fox News, Anderson Cooper on CNN, and Rachel Maddow on MSNBC, they all report this. A 7th grader in middle Georgia brought fentanyl laced candy to school and 7 kids overdosed. It wasn't fentanyl, it was weed. It's weed. So when kids tell me you can't overdose on weed, okay, this ain't weed. Now, I got a hold of the guy, the father. He wouldn't let me interview his kid on camera, but I went and talked to him, and I interviewed the father on camera. The kid told me where he bought it. Earth Stew, it's a website. He used to get it from this other website called Space Coast CBD. They were $39.99 a bag. I said, well, why did you switch? He said, because this new site was $30 a bag. He's a frugal 7th grader. So he's buying Skittles. But look at this other site. They don't even bother changing the last S to a Z. And that little sticker on the bag, Delta 8 sticker, it peels right off the bag. Now you tell me how your 3rd, 4th, 5th grader doesn't know that those aren't Skittles. Tell me that. I don't want to startle you and scare you this close to Halloween, right? No one's buying $40 bags and gonna hand them out to kids in your neighborhood, right? Probably not, right? It's too expensive. But this is getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and it's easy to produce. I can make this with my eyes closed. I showed you the Skittles and the Nerds boxes that are being printed by the Sinaloa cartel, because those guys weren't illegal immigrants. They were cartel gang members, and they were from Maryland, and they went up to Hartford, Connecticut to sell these candies in actual candy boxes. So I'm telling everybody I care about, I'm telling every parent I care about, listen, and I care about every parent, so that's why I'm telling you, but I don't want to startle anybody. It was mentioned about candy to kids, but I don't want your kids coming home freaking out like, I can't go Halloween trick-or-treating, right? If you're trick-or-treating in your neighborhood, I just tell kids, you don't touch a thing. You don't touch anything until you get home. Mom and dad looks at everything. Just let mom and dad look at everything. Eat like a pig before you go trick-or-treating, and then you don't get hungry to eat candy when you're out there. But what I'm telling parents is, what I'm telling you is, man, go to Walmart and buy all the darn store-bought candy you can buy, and then have a Halloween party at your house. This generation is lazy anyway. If you tell them they can fill their bags in your living room and they don't have to walk a mile to trick-or-treat, they'll come to your house. And then you can have a $100 gift card for a contest for the costume, right? I wouldn't go, listen, my kids, their kids, my grandkids are not trick-or-treating. They are not trick-or-treating. They're going to church party, right? Costume thing before Halloween, because they don't do it on Halloween. The churches don't do it on Halloween, but they're not trick-or-treating. I wouldn't trick-or-treat, and I wouldn't let my kids trick-or-treat. Not anymore. Not now. Now, this is a 7th grader in Bergenfield, New Jersey. He overdosed in school on these Skittles. He bought them at the vape shop across the street from the school. I took a picture, and it dawned on me, wait a minute, when did this kid overdose? And he said, about a week and a half ago. I said, well, how do you still have the Skittles? I mean, doesn't law enforcement want this? He goes, they didn't want it. They have dozens of them. Okay, shouldn't we be like doing something about this? So how about those Mad Chills, Delta 8s, candy clusters? You think they're marketed to adults? I disagree, but we can disagree. Skittles, gummies, this is all weed. This is weed. This is Delta 8 hemp derived, and it'll get you very high. If you eat that whole bag, you're zooted. A child eats that whole bag, you're going to the hospital. Stone patches, like Sour Patches, Spaceballs, Skyheads, High Bites, these are all from vape shops. From vape shops. It's legal in all 50 states. I bought those Nerd Ropes in Branson, and I peeled that sticker off. I couldn't even find Nerd Rope candy. It took me like a week to find it, and it's identical. Delta 8 Nerd Ropes, the packaging was identical. Cannaburst gummies, so these are Happy Pens. Happy Pens. Delta 10 Happy Pens. Mind Tricks, peanut butter and jelly, and cookies and cream. So this is being marketed to children. Those are cannabis. Those are cannabis. Cannabis-infused coffee, right? They weren't even behind the counter. This is Delta 8, Delta 10, hemp derived. So at that store, this is really funny. Outside the store, Delta 8. I love this one. 5 possible benefits. So they're not locked in. They're not locked in. This is all the things that you can see as a benefit from Delta 8, but it's only possible. So this billboard is on a highway as you come down into Louisville, Kentucky. It was the first one I saw. And that company is now the fastest growing online distributor of Delta 8, Delta 10, THC, HHC products. And when you go to their website to order it, they're protecting kids, though. Rest assured, they're protecting kids. Because when you go to their website, a little box pops up on your screen. It says, are you 21 years of age or older? Yes or no? So it's really tricky. I don't know that kids are going to figure it out to push yes. So that's at that shop at Walmart right there. Those are whippets. I don't know if you've been following, but the state of New York just banned 18-year-olds and younger from buying whipped cream in the grocery store. The state of New York just passed a law, if you are 17 years of age or younger, you can't buy whipped cream in the grocery store. Why? Because kids are using cans for whippets. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but now we're selling whippets at your vape shop in Decatur. Now we're selling whippets at your vape shop in Decatur. All over the country, but right in your local community, they're selling whippets at the vape shop. And there's no age. There's no age. So you're going to start to hear a lot more about cannabis hyperemesis syndrome. It's where you lose control of your gastrointestinal system. You're going to start to hear more about cannabis-induced psychosis, where the high THC is inducing psychosis. And then if your child's on medication, the drug-to-drug interaction from the high-potent THC and the Adderall or the Wellbutrin or the Xanax or the Klonopin or whatever your kid might be on is having this drug-to-drug interaction with THC. So the last thing I'll share with you is about addiction, because a lot of our kids are saying they're addicted. You can ask the superintendent, you can ask the principals of all the schools that I've gone to so far. One of the last questions I ask in schools, middle school and high school, is listen, raise your hand if you know a middle school or a high school kid who's vaping and you 100% believe they're addicted to it. And about 75% of the kids raise their hand. 75% of your middle school and high school kids believe that they know kids who are addicted to vaping. And if 1/3 of that is accurate, we have a crisis. So what am I going to tell people? So I go out and I get every smoking cessation product I can find on the market. The patches, the lozenge, the gum, and everything. The Zyn pouches, everything I could find. And I turn the boxes around. And in the directions box it says, if you are under 18 years of age, consult a doctor before use, because no studies have been done to show if the product will work for you. You know all that legal paperwork on the inside of things that we never read, we just hope and pray nothing goes wrong? Well, I read all that legal paperwork, and you know what it says? No studies have ever been done. None of these products, not a one, and I found 28, have ever been tested on a child. So if your 13-year-old is addicted to a vape, are you going to put them on a product that's never been tested on a child to get them off of a product that they weren't supposed to be on as a child? I don't know what to tell you, but I do know what to tell you. This is a medical issue now. So you can't discipline your kids, take their PlayStation away, remove their phone because they have a vape. Okay? I'm not going to tell you how to be a parent, but you can't discipline your way out of this. Secondhand vape exhalation is worse than secondhand smoke from a cigarette. The vaping concentration level, the nicotine concentration level in the vape is higher than the cigarette. Vaping is harder to quit than cigarettes. We have to partner with our kids. And again, I'll say it's my favorite saying. Kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Partner with your kids. There has to be consequences. Has to be consequences. Discipline your kids. But you have to understand that. This one kid came up to me in St. Teresa today. It was so amazing. Nobody gave me their vape, so I was kind of disappointed. But this kid comes all the way back in, and he says, can I talk to you? And he's got his hand in his pocket. Obviously, he's giving me his vape, right? And he's like, yeah, I think it is time I quit. I just don't know, man. I just don't know. I'm scared of getting headaches and cravings. And I said, here's my card. Go on my website. There's a 12-page guide that I wrote, how to quit. If you really want to quit, it ain't going to be easy, but I promise you, it is possible. So he just thanked me and walked away. Partner with your kids. Partner with them, right? So all the schools getting booklets from Drug Free World. That video I showed you earlier, it's a nonprofit organization in Los Angeles. There's a link on it from my website. You can take a whole drug course for free online, and it's available in 22 different languages. Spanish, German, Chinese, Swahili, French, 22 different languages this is available in. And it'll educate you about 14 different drugs. I'm on social media, Steered Straight's on Facebook. If you want to learn more, stay up to date. I urge you to follow Steered Straight. Please follow Steered Straight, because I'm putting up daily what you need to be aware of, what you need to catch up on, what you need to understand that's happening, and the changes in this. I also have 3 personal pages for Facebook. So you can follow me individually. I have a public figure page. I don't need more friends. I need you to be aware. And so I use all these pages to put information up every single day. Now there's a QR code right there that'll give you everything from Instagram to Twitter to LinkedIn and the Facebook pages. This book I urge you to buy. Again, not because I'm trying to sell books. I need to sell books because I'm giving so many away. But what I'm also doing is trying to put this book and this information in the hands of parents. So I appreciate your time. I'm glad you showed up tonight. I'm going to be coming back here. I haven't done all the schools, but there's more schools that I want to do. And then I got to go back to the schools that I did in the spring anyway. Because don't you wish you could tell kids something one time and it would penetrate, you know? Clean your room. Don't got to worry about that again, right? You got to tell them over and over and over. So when I come back, I have a follow-up. And the kids love it even more because they've already seen me, I didn't disappoint them, and now I have something to come back and tell them. And I don't do the same presentation. So I will do another parent community event. I always say it's about quality, not quantity anyway. And in many ways I know I'm preaching to the choir. But ladies and gentlemen, you're not your kid's parent. You're your kid's parent, and you're the quasi-parent for every kid that they come in touch with. It's not fair, but it's reality. Your schools are doing what they can. All the superintendent, all the administrators that I've met in this district care passionately about these kids. Every counselor that I've met in the school district cares passionately about these kids, and they're really trying to make a difference. We've got to do something. We've got to change what's happening. So I'll be down here. I have my business card. I'll give you my business card. I used to have a table with all a bunch of brochures and everything. Everything's on the website. It just makes it easier for you to get all your information on an ongoing basis. Now, last thing I'll say is tomorrow the superintendent of schools is getting a video, and it's an hour, it's 80 minutes long, and it's just what I did just now, but not the Decatur stuff really, and some of the stuff I've added is not in the video because I'd be updating this video like every week, but it's 80 minutes and it's 90% of what I presented to tonight. And I'm asking every school in the whole city, whether I've been there or not, to send it out to every parent. Every parent in the entire school district needs to be aware. Because just because they didn't come, just because they went to the soccer game, doesn't mean I shouldn't give them the information. I have to give them the information. But you can share this with other people. I urge you to buy the book. If you buy the book and we'll leave a review on Amazon, we'll send you the $20 back. Because I'm trying to get parents to understand how important this book is. So I'm here for you. On my card is my email. On my card is my cell phone. I do not put my cell phone on my card because I don't want you to call me. I want you to ask me a question. The night before last, I get a text from a mom in New Jersey whose daughter is at ASU in Phoenix, Arizona. And apparently on her Snapchat, she put up this picture. She's dancing on a table and she has this contraption in her mouth and around her body. And her mom sends me the picture, the screenshot. She goes, "What the hell is my daughter doing?" And I said, "Does your daughter have asthma?" And she goes, "No." I said, "Well, you got a problem. That's a nebulizer in her mouth, and they've crafted it to ingest drugs, probably nicotine or THC, probably weed. She's smoking weed through a nebulizer. It's a big thing the kids are doing in college, but the woman had absolutely no idea what the heck was going on. So if you have a picture, you find something in your kid's room, you want to ask me a question, on my website, we sell drug tests. The best drug tests, saliva tests, so you don't have to do urine screens. But I can tell you, there's a nicotine test on my website. I can tell you if nicotine's been in your kid's mouth in the last 72 hours. And I don't care how much mouthwash they've used. I want you to be able to test your kids because not to catch them, but to be a deterrent. Your kids need a deterrent. Because if your son's friend said, "Hey man, you want to smoke weed after school?" Your son can say, "Yeah, my mom's crazy, absolutely crazy. And she drug tests me. And if I get high with you and I come up on a random drug test with mom and she tests me weekly, I'll lose my iPhone 27. And I need my iPhone 27 because I'm in the 6th grade. I need my iPhone 27. So it's just a mechanism that you can give your kids where they can tell their friends, I would, but I can't. So I really appreciate your time. I'm here. I'll stay here as long as anyone has any questions. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. I very appreciate it. Now that I scared the hell out of every parent. Is that another word for me? Yeah.